Yes.
Is North Korea part of the topic between Secretary Blinken and Chinese State Councillor Wang Yi this morning?
We both issued readouts following the call that took place yesterday evening Eastern time. There were a range of topics discussed, but ultimately it was an opportunity for Secretary Blinken and State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi to demonstrate that we mean what we say when we have a commitment to maintaining open channels of dialogue. We believe that this is a bilateral relationship that has to be managed responsibly. We are committed to responsible management of this relationship. We believe in high-level dialogue. The call last night spoke to that as well. There are a range of issues in the bilateral relationship. There are a range of concerns in the broader region as well. I'm not in a position to go beyond what was in the readout, but we believe we have a responsibility to engage our PRC counterparts regularly regarding this.
Can you share how long is the phone call and what's the atmosphere like?
It was a phone call that lasted over an hour. It was about 70 or so minutes. We would characterize the phone call as productive, as useful. It was professional. Secretary Blinken and Foreign Minister and State Councillor Wang Yi had an opportunity to discuss a number of issues, but Secretary Blinken, for his part, thought it was important to raise, once again, Russia's continued war against Ukraine and the threat it poses to global peace and economic stability and prosperity. This is something that the PRC has heard from us directly a number of times in recent months. They've heard it from us over the phone. They heard it from us in Bali when Secretary Blinken met with Wang Yi for over 4 hours, almost 5 hours at the time. They heard it in New York when Secretary Blinken and Wang Yi met at the time. But there were a number of issues also discussed, including Haiti, where the humanitarian situation there is unsustainable. The status quo is unsustainable. The Secretary made the point that for the sake of the Haitian people, the humanitarian concerns on the island of Haiti, we need to set aside any political disagreements, any political issues, and really focus on that humanitarian plight and how we can help relieve what the Haitian people are enduring at the moment.
In the Chinese statement, the readout, it says Wang Yi said the United States should stop trying to contain and suppress China and avoid creating obstacles to the relationship. What is the Secretary's response?
Well, the Secretary's response is a point he's made repeatedly. It's a point that was really central to the speech he gave in May, in which he outlined our approach broadly to the People's Republic of China. He said at the time, and this has been true ever since, we don't seek to contain China. Our goal is not to hold China back. Our goal is to uphold the rules-based international order that has helped to manage constructively and effectively relations between states for the better part of 80 years. Any idea that, any notion that our policy is directed against China or any other country around the world is not true. It is true, of course, that we have profound disagreements with the PRC in a number of areas. Ultimately, it's a relationship that is predicated at its core by competition. Part of the reason why we believe it's important to have regular dialogue and exchanges with the PRC is because we believe we have to manage this competition responsibly. But it's competition, there are adversarial elements, as we know, and there are cooperative elements. And the two last night, certainly Secretary Blinken last night, did make the point again that we have shared interests in certain areas. It would be in the interest of each of our countries, but more broadly, in the interest of the international community, if we were to find a way to cooperate and to coordinate in some of those areas of shared interest.
Follow up on that, talking about the cooperation, what's the next step? Will we see more engagement between Secretary Blinken and Wang Yi before the potential summit in Bali?
I couldn't speak to any forthcoming phone calls. What I can tell you is that the Secretary has made clear to his counterpart on at least a few occasions now that he should feel free to pick up the phone anytime. The Secretary also adopts that approach. The Secretary believes that we need to maintain these open lines of communication. So if there's a need from our side or from Beijing for Secretary Blinken and Wang Yi to speak before the upcoming G20 meeting in Bali, I have no doubt that will happen.
Can I just follow up on China?
Sure.
It's two things. So Secretary has had the chance to speak to his Chinese counterpart throughout the course of Ukraine war many times, and US has asked China to use its leverage with Russia to put an end to this war. Was there anything in this phone call that suggested that Beijing would cooperate on that particular point?
I think it's fair to say that Secretary Blinken last night did not hear anything when it comes to the PRC's approach to Russia's war against Ukraine that we haven't heard before. I'm not going to characterize it, but of course the PRC has spoken publicly to its approach. Interestingly, President Putin has also spoken to the PRC's approach, made an interesting comment, as I recall, that the Russians have heard privately from the PRC about concerns that the PRC has regarding Russia's prosecution of this war against the people of Ukraine. It's really no surprise that the PRC would voice these concerns, at least in private, because what Russia is doing, is attempting to do in the context of Ukraine, flies in the face of everything that we have heard from the PRC and the international system over the course of decades. The PRC consistently emphasizes the role of sovereignty, state sovereignty, the inviolability of international borders, the right of countries around the world to determine their own foreign policy. That is what is at stake when it comes to Russia's war against Ukraine. Russia is taking aim at the Ukrainian people, at the Ukrainian government, but it's also taking aim at those very principles.
And the possibility of a meeting between President Biden and Xi, was that discussed? And based on that discussion, should we expect that meeting to happen?
I don't have any updates for you on that. Of course, I would defer to my White House colleagues to speak to any potential meetings that President Biden would have. As they have said before, during their last conversation, the two presidents tasked their teams to look into the possibility of a meeting in the coming weeks. But I would need to refer to the White House on next steps there.
Any comments on the upcoming Chinese president visit and the summits that he will hold in Saudi Arabia? Will it add any tension to the relations with the U.S.?
I'm not aware that both countries have confirmed the visit, so I would, of course, defer to Saudi Arabia and the PRC to speak to any impending bilateral visit between the two leaders. The point that we have made consistently over the course of this administration is that we are not asking countries around the world to choose between the United States and the PRC. We're not asking countries around the world to choose between the United States and any other country. Countries are going to make their own sovereign decisions about their foreign policy, about their relationships, about their partnerships and alliances. Our goal is to give countries around the world a choice and to make the choice of the United States and what we bring to the table the most attractive option available.